to take a walk here, sit on one of the benches, or even do some fishing right here at Kinsey Park Development. Here to the right side, the East Bank Club is adding condos, more luxury living spaces right here along the North Branch of our river. Old Baltimore, Ohio terminal warehouse designed by Nimmons and Fellows. Once again, new windows, new black iron balconies, renovated for River Loft condominiums. This is our industrial past here on the North Branch of our river. Only industry for many, many, many years. It was pretty much owned by the Montgomery Ward's company. They were here for almost a century, cruising down the North Branch of our river. We will see three types of architecture and what we refer to as the Montgomery Ward's trio. Now, if you look kind of out in front of the boat, to the right side, coming into view, is a very tall building with blue glass in the center of it. That is the 1974 Montgomery Ward's office building designed by Minoru Yamasaki. Very much in that modern museum or international style there in the center. However, it appears to me that Yamasaki decided to make a very democratic gesture. No one got a corner office in that building. He is hoping that it will stay a park, but I'm not sure as of yet. My guess could be more luxury living spaces, just like these two buildings coming up here on your right, also just completed this summer in a beautiful cream and yellow pastel. Now these yellow pastel piers in front of the building, along with the darkened recessed windows, are actually paying homage to the snack Macaulay. You see they're doing some renovations here along the south facade. Now the vertical elements on this building, called piers, protrude from the building. The horizontal elements above and below the windows are called spandrels, and they are designed by Richard Schmidt. Now Richard Schmidt was a colleague of Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright said, "We are living on a prairie and the architecture should match our horizon." This would be one of the best examples of the prairie style, with its long, low, emphasized horizontal lines. The prairie style is a spin-off of the Chicago school. And some immigrants used to reside here, and they raised lots of geese. William Butler Ogden, our first mayor, has this canal here to your right, dug out knowing full well that he can sell waterfront property at a higher price. After digging out this canal, he takes the clay to make bricks, and then he has a load of bricks to sell after the Great Chicago Fire. Mr. Ogden certainly knew what he was doing around this town. Yes, the canal meets back up with the North Material Service Corporation. Although it looks like many of our buildings are steel and glass, now over 50% are reinforced concrete. That's where they get the material, and they just barge it down the river to the building site. As we make the turn, if you look on top of our 1928 Art Deco building, you see a green gal standing up there? Some of you may even recognize her, as she graced the covers of the Montgomery Ward's catalogs, dating all the way back to the late 1890s. Her sister stood on the original Ward's caissons that go very, very deep down into bedrock. Coming up here on your left, another wonderful addition to our North Branch. This is our new river landing. Another place to sit, relax, or do some fishing here on the North Branch. As we cruise past, you see that gorgeous, colorful mosaic there in the center. If you walk up the steps, you can now get a bite to eat in the new outdoor cafe. If you keep looking off to your left, you're going to get another peek, I hope, of our John Hancock building out there. We'll see if we can see it. No. Oh, it's gone. It is our Sears Tower. There it is, reaching 1,454 feet up in the sky. The Sears Tower is standing on 110 caissons, 75 feet down into bedrock. That caisson so significant to the building of skyscrapers here in our city. In the mid-1800s, thousands upon thousands of immigrants arrived. This is the building of the Sanitary and Ship Canal. Took 8 years to complete, 8,500 workers to complete it. They moved more dirt for this project than they did for the Panama Canal. The Sanitary and Ship Canal is a solve our problem for our drinking water. Mayor Daley, the father of our present mayor, once predicted Chicagoans would be able to catch their lunch in the river. Today, there are 69 different species of fish swimming in these waters, along with beaver and fox playing on the banks of the river. As a matter of fact, the EPA just upgraded us a few years ago. We are no longer toxic. We are polluted, and we have never been so happy. Coming up here, 333 West Wacker, tipping its hat to the Merchandise Mart, the Apparel Mart, and the new residences at Riverbend in its green glass facade. In 1994, the Chicago Lee Morton International and Boeing bought the building just a few years ago. But I have to tell you, architects avoided that site where Boeing is standing for a very long time, because now you will see, as we cruise down the south branch of our river, lots and lots of railroad tracks. Many of the buildings here on their south branch are built on air rights. This red building here on your right has been painted red. It is the old Butler Brothers Warehouse, 1913, by Daniel Burnham. Daniel Burnham also trained in the Beaux-Arts School of Design in Paris, so it looks a little bit like an Italian fortress. New windows, new black iron balconies, renovated for Randolph Place. This building was so... I'm going to sink caissons in the other three corners of the site. I'm going to build the building up. I'm going to cantilever a steel truss across the top. I'm going to drop the columns down on the other side and fill in the floors. The southwest corner literally hanging in space. They did everything right with this building. Riverwalks, landscaping, up above the 4 levels cruise down the south branch of our river. When we turn around and come back up this way, you can see that steel truss at the top of the building. It has been left exposed. Very Art Deco building here on your right. It is the old home of the Chicago Daily newspaper. The newspaper's gone, but the building survives. Riverside Plaza, 1930, designed by Halliburtt and Root. They used the center part of this building for entertainment during the Great by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. Once again, you see that influence of Mies van der Rohe with these Miesian modern or international style buildings. Also designed by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, the firm now known as SOM. This one, designed and built in the 1970s, once again in that modern style of architecture. No longer you would have a close-up of the John Hancock building. The X-bracing on the exterior of this building, however, was to allow for column-free floors so you could see hand signals when trading. In the John Hancock, that X-bracing is for wind shears. They tested the design of the John Hancock building for wind shears up to 132 miles per hour. You will see the transition in architecture with this next building coming up on your of the modern style. Note, this postmodern building exploits its site on the river. with the curve of the river here. The windows convex or bow out to give a shimmer to that glass facade, making it look like a beautiful jeweled box. Gateway 4. It's the largest and the most obsolete post office in the whole wide world. That's our old post office. But the plans were just announced. 2.5 million square feet, soon to go under renovation for condos, hotels, restaurants, and of course we'll have estates. This area off to your left here is known as Printers Row. This is where they would print catalogs, books, newspapers, and then it was very easy to ship across our South Branch where they could be mailed all over the world. On either side of this new white building called the Wells Street Tower, you'll get some peeks of some of the diversity. Goldberg said that nature was his inspiration. No right angles in nature. No, he thinks that this curvilinear form is more artful and much more compatible for living spaces. It is a mixed-use building, living space, office space, and if you own a boat, this would be the place to live. They agitate the water in the harbor here, so it never ever freezes, and you can leave your boat docked here all winter long, and you don't have to take it down the South Branch and dry dock it for the winter. Now, if we could talk Larry, our captain, into staying on the South Branch, we could get all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. We had miles and miles of wooden sidewalks. Chicago was a tinderbox. It was simply a disaster waiting to happen. The first week of October of 1871, over 30 fires broke out throughout our city. And then on the night of October 8th, around 9 o'clock at night, another fire broke out on the southwest side of the city at the streets of Decovid and Jefferson. If you look off to your right, you see a very tall red and white radio tower out there. To the right of that tower, in 1871, sat Mrs. O'Leary's barn. According to legend, Mrs. O'Leary, who had a milk business in the barn behind her house, went out to milk her cow. This unruly animal kicks over the kerosene lamp. The hay catches on fire, the barn catches on fire, and the fire gets out of control. Exhausted firemen from fighting the previous fires, confusion. The firemen ran to the wrong side at first. The fire starts traveling east. It leaps over the South Branch of the river right here. Then sometime during the force wind blowing that night, and the fire starts rampaging in a northerly direction. The fire gets down to the main branch of our river, and people just hoped and prayed that it might stop there at the main branch. But pieces of wood, cinder, ashes get hurled over the main branch and land on the rooftops of the buildings on the north side. It starts the whole north side on fire. There was a moving wall of fire, doing everything it possibly can to get some attention away from our Sears Tower that sits behind it. It is 311 South Wacker by Cohn, Pedersen, and Fox. They take an octagon, add some angles, 14 in all. It is currently the tallest reinforced concrete building in our city at 969 feet, and it definitely wins the illumination contest. It is the first thing you see on our skyline in the evenings because there are 2,000 fluorescent lights in that crown on top. To the right of it, the beige building with the two white spires is AT&T by Adrian Smith, 1980s. Another postmodern building looking back to that Art Deco style of the 1920s. To the right again, a skinny pink building with a green gabled roof is 190 South LaSalle by Philip Johnson. Now, Philip Johnson was sort of the guru of the modern style. He brought Mies van der Rohe here to Chicago. He decides to do a 1930, designed by Holabird and Root. Very Art Deco in its design, with its setbacks and pyramid roof. Now, standing on top is Ceres, and she is the goddess of grain. However, she has no face. No, the sculptor John Storrs was probably told very simply and arrogantly to drums marching around the top is the 1910 Insurance Exchange building by Daniel Burnham. If Daniel Burnham had his way, today we would be looking at all heroic white classical revival buildings like that one. Daniel Burnham wanted Chicago to be a Paris on the prairie. It did cause a split in the 9 75-foot boxes that have been bundled together for wind bracing. It is built on an architectural theory called bundled to construction, which basically means if you put one straw in the wind, it wouldn't be very stable. But if you another difficult site to build on our triangles. This time he takes two right-angled triangles, connects them at the hypotenuse, makes that the longest line of his site. Then he brightens up the whole building in a white anodized aluminum. He takes the columns on the perimeter, turns the columns 45 degrees to make them look like triangles as well. This 3-level glass enclosed lobby here catches all of the natural light. Corners, the piers flare out. This is called battering to give a sense of stability to these very tall buildings. Concrete frame. That black boxy pavilion we saw back on the South Branch became a little too small for our Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So in the 1980s, they hired Fujigawa and Johnson to design this next building coming up on your right, sheathed in a lovely pink granite. The 11-story offices per floor. Everybody in this town wants that corner office. Another Art Deco building coming. The building was nicknamed Insull's Throne. Samuel Insull, utility magnate, puts up half of the $23 million, hoping that a mixed-use building would help support our opera. This is the side wall of our opera theater. His wife is at home in the parlor reading a book next to the birdcage. She gets up to greet Jenny, and she takes the book that she's reading and she places it on top of the birdcage. Ivy is the Great Lakes Building, 1912 by Halliburton and Roach. Oh, so proud of that. Looks back to the Chicago School Architects with his 3-part design. Once again, you see a base, a shaft, and in this case, the top or capital, 2 towers connected by a bridge. It is a metaphor for the bridges of light. 60 years later, Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, they match the color, the verticals, the horizontals, they update it with the ribbon windows, and then they pull it all together at the top. At the base, marble, mahogany, and sweeping staircases, as the builders wanted to show their clients how well they could build. Next door, the LaSalle Wacker Building, named for the 2 streets it sits on, 1929 by Halliburton and Root. They were building so tall by a 4-way pediment, sheathed in silver reflective glass, adorned with Greek columns from the top to the bottom. A postmodern building, looking back to classical Greek architecture. This was the R.R. Donnelly Building, they just sold it, 1992. Designed by Ricardo Bofill of Barcelona, huge Renaissance windows. Another award winner coming up on your right, a square classical column sheathed in a gray-green granite. It is the Leo Burnett Building, designed by Kevin Roach, Irish-born architect. Now, if you'll notice, about a third of the way up, Kevin Roach pulls out the cornice on his building to exactly match the roof here on 55. Another postmodern building, tipping its hat to a building that was here oh so many years before it. In 1990, the World Prada, it was the Carbide Carbon Building of 1929, designed by the Burnham brothers, Daniel's 2 sons. They said their inspiration was a champagne bottle. Coming up here on your right, in a cream color, one of the last of the old wedding cake styles, it is the Jewelers Building, topped off by an elegant classical dome. 1926, Fugard, Dingelberg, Theobar, and Claver. Neo-Baroque on the 34th floor, called the Stratosphere. Capone and the boys. Here to your right, just along our river, is Wacker Drive. It was named after Charles Wacker. He was head of that planning commission promoting the Chicago Plan of 1909. It was designed and built in the 1920s in that Beaux-Arts style of design to reflect those elegant European riverside treatments as along the famous rivers in Europe. Up ahead here, this is the architectural heart of Chicago. Side of our main branch, this is City Front Center. It was designed by Dirk Lohan. He is Mises' grandson. He designed this building coming up on your left, Bleacher Center. It is the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business and Extension. The steel and glass along the river, evoking that modern style, made popular by his grand. She is Chicago rising from the lake. She has the head of a cow in one arm and sheep of wheat in the other. She was designed by golf course. Why not? So they hired Perry Dye, the son of Pete Dye, who's famous for designing golf courses. And we had the only downtown city golf course in all of the United States right over there. They just closed it. Yes, this residential project you now see under construction, called Lakeshore East, when completed will be so big it will even have its own elementary school. Coming up here on your left, just above the water, is our Metropolitan Water Reclamation District that reversed our river 100 and some years ago. This fountain truly showing Chicago's perfect location. The center part represents our city. The bars cascading down on the left side symbolize all the different waterways connecting us to the Gulf of Mexico. The Barminiums by Jim DeStefano. The red brick matching the red brick of our old warehouses along the river, and the green glass windows matching the green of our river. We're going back under our Roosevelt Bridge on our way home. It is one of 50 movable bridges that span our river. It was completed in 1916, the architect Charles Sumner Frost. It's the pier there you see off to your left where the Ferris wheel is sitting. However, since 1916, this pier has had so many different uses, it acquired its own nickname, the Nine Lives Lady of the Lake. Due to the haste and inexperience of those young pilots back then. 1946, still another change. The University of Illinois uses a train back to Chicago. Streeter doesn't give up. Now he decides to make a fortune running guns illegally to the South American outlaws. So one day he loads the old tub with guns, and he gets about 450 feet off. He invites other squatters to come out.